Hey there, welcome to Improv FAQ. I'm James Quesada, and the question for this video is, what is improv comedy? Which most of the time we just call improv. The most straightforward answer is improv is unscripted theater. And there's actually lots of different kinds of improv. In fact, improv is only one half of the equation in improv comedy. There's improv, which is short for improvisation. That's the making it up as you go part. And then there's comedy, which is short for comedy. And in the US, when we say improv, we're almost always referring to improv comedy. And that is what I'll be talking about on this channel. But I think it's important to understand that it is a compound art form, and there are places that practice and perform improv without strictly tying it to comedy, especially in Europe and in the UK, places in Canada, and even in the US. And in those cases, it might be referred to something like improvised theater or improvisation or something with a sophisticated ring to it. I'll touch on this a bit more in this video and beyond, but with that asterisk out of the way, let's continue with our definition of improv comedy. If you come across a place that calls itself an improv theater and you go to see an improv show, you can expect to see any combination of scenes, stories, characters, games, challenges, songs, and everything you're going to see is made up on the spot by the performers, aka the improvisers. Sometimes it can look like a game show, like Whose Line Is It Anyway? Or Wild 'N Out. And sometimes it can look like an improvised sketch show or an improvised play. There might be an additional layer to the show, like musical improv or improvised fairy tales. Most of the time, you'll see improv groups and teams, but there are plenty of improv duos and even solo shows. Regardless of what kind of improv show you're seeing, here are 4 things that you can usually expect. 1, like I said, usually improv is intended to be comedy. Sometimes an improv show will aim to be dramatic or non-comedic. There are certainly shows that care more about good story and just being entertaining regardless of how funny it is, but usually improv and comedy go hand in hand. 2, usually improv involves acting. The performers play fictional characters and act out fictional scenes. Although there are also non-scenic segments like telling a real-life story or playing a charade-style guessing game. 3, usually, an improv show will use suggestions or other forms of participation from the audience to inspire the players. Can we get a suggestion of an opening line of dialogue? How about a suggestion of a location that would fit on the stage? There's something in Jeff's pocket. What is it? We're gonna do an improvised sci-fi horror romance. What's the name of a sci-fi horror romance that's never been made? Since it's unscripted, it's helpful for the improvisers to have some kind of starting point to get things going, and using suggestions from a live audience helps prove that it is unscripted. The inspiration for a show could come from sources other than the audience, like a newspaper or Craigslist ads or a fortune cookie. And sometimes the performers don't use a suggestion at all. There's a pretty well-known improv duo called TJ and Dave, and instead of asking for a suggestion, they just say, "Trust us, this is all made up." And the lights go down, and when they come back up, they start improvising. But more often than not, you can expect improvisers are going to ask people in the audience for some inspiration. 4, usually improv does not involve the use of costumes, props, or set pieces. Since improvisers are making it all up on the spot, it's most helpful if we keep ourselves and the stage looking like a blank canvas. Instead of props, we use object work or pantomime so that at any moment, anything we need, we can just reach out and grab it out of thin air. Oh, thank you. A cup of coffee. On stage, we might have a few chairs or boxes for levels and to sit and stuff. And the stage might have a couple doorways or window frames, which are great for entrances and exits, but anything more than that can be distracting or restricting. Same thing with clothes. Improvisers are usually going to perform in neutral street clothes or business casual to keep things flexible while they're trying to create a believable character on the spot. Like the rest of these, there are exceptions to those norms. Sometimes an improv show will use costumes and props or set pieces as an added challenge, or it might be the whole show concept. But in general, things are going to be pretty bare bones. Those are the types of things that you might see in an improv show. And if you see an improv class being offered, you can expect to learn how to do those things. Which brings me to my next point. Some people go to take an improv class and understandably have misled expectations. So while we're at it, here are 3 things that improv is not. One, improv is not stand-up. Difference being, stand-up is usually somebody on a microphone talking directly to the audience, telling jokes that are usually written or thought out ahead of time, if not heavily rehearsed. And sure, some stand-ups will riff with the audience or speak off the cuff in a way that is actually improvised. Sometimes they'll do that for their entire set. But if you go to see an improv show or take an improv class, don't expect to see joke telling or learn how to write and deliver a joke. Two, improv is not sketch. Sketch comedy is generally written, or at least pre-planned, and usually comes in collections of short scenes and character bits. Saturday Night Live, Portlandia, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson, Key and Peele, Inside Amy Schumer. These are all great examples of sketch comedy that you might be familiar with. Improv is often used as a tool for sketch to generate ideas or to develop scenes, but basically, once it's developed, it's no longer improv. And third, improv is not trying to find ways to work in your best jokes and quips and one-liners that you thought of earlier this week into a show. A lot of people ask, I know it's improv, but how much of it is really improvised? And the answer is, or should be, all of it is actually truly improvised. The goal of improv is not to try and trick the audience into believing that something is improvised when it secretly isn't. It's not a magic show. The improv is real. And as performers, a major reason why it's so fun and addictive is because it's completely improvised. Among many other things, improv comedy is a friggin' joyride. That's it for this video, but make sure you follow and subscribe for answers to more questions about improv, like how does it work? What can you expect from an improv class? And deeper, more advanced dives into what defines improv and all those different styles I mentioned here on Improv FAQ.